Hi, this is Dr. Roy Sheneman from Tier 1 Coaching and Training, tier1coaching.org. I want to thank you so much for joining me today as we're going to talk a little bit more about an ongoing series we have called Interviews Made Easy. As you might recall, in the past several weeks, we have contemplated different aspects of the interview process, including the application process and just making those connections with the company. Just by way of just a brief overview of some of the things we talked about making yourself absolutely the most obvious candidate for that job. What does that mean? Well, that means that you're being very, very careful to word your application and or your resume or your online presence in such a way that it creates the opportunity for others to recognize that you are a great candidate for this job. And they want to get to know you better. They want to bring you in for a possible interview. And that's obvious you need to do that. And secondly, we talked about the importance of making contacts with that company, getting to know people, understanding that while you may not know anybody directly, you probably have friends who know some people who might be able to make an introduction to you. This is great way to gather information about the company and to make that contact and hopefully increase the odds of you getting a positive referral from the inside of the company that could lead to that interview that you're so desperately seeking and trying to get this job. And understanding that your resume and or your online presence is not a tattoo. What does that mean? That means it's not permanent. It's something that needs to be updated daily, well, or at least on a regular basis. You need to look at what you've done. If education things have changed, you acquired a new degree, a new certification, a new skill set. If you have done something that is different in recent times, you constantly update your presence, so that this thing is not a stale document. It is live and up to date so that it's very, very useful. Secondly, we want to make sure that you are exciting. You come across in a way, not only in what you write, in terms of how you represent yourself in the application process, in the resume process, that it is never boring, that it is on point with what is required for this job, and it is something that is attractive to other people as they read it and they contemplate whether or not to bring you in for that interview. And here's the other thing we talked about last week. We talked about the importance of being online, having a presence on LinkedIn or some other similar online social platform, something that's going to allow you to present yourself and your credentials and your history in a little more depth. It's something that people can utilize along the way to helping to get to know you and really feel like you are a good fit for this particular company. With that in mind, be very, very careful what you put there. Make sure, A, it's factual. Never, ever, ever lie. Because if somebody finds out, if the truth comes out that you really just overinflated what your background is, for example, or you just totally changed the truth, so to speak, in something you wrote there, that can come back to haunt you. And I will tell you that more than one employee has seen their career go down the tubes simply because they lied on an application. So don't ever, ever do that. And likewise with your online presence, make sure that you don't do anything that's not truthful in there as well. And so today we want to talk a little bit more about, let's assume you get the interview. They've called you up. They said they've invited you to come in on a certain day at a certain time to do your interview. So let's talk a little bit about just some basic things about what to think about in that and to do as we prepare for that. Number one, recognize that you are being invited into a club, so to speak, for lack of a better way of framing it. You're trying to join somebody else's club, and they're inviting you to come in and for them to take a look at you and to see whether you are a worthy candidate, somebody that they want to invest in terms of future benefits and wages. And so it's really, really important that you do everything you can to make sure you shine in that interview. So here's the thing. You got to remember this. This is arguably the most important thing that we've talked about all along, and it's really something that we were just reiterating here in a little different way. That is this. You need to realize that everything you do or say, every action that you take that takes place before, during, and after an interview is telling a story about you. Your mission here is to present yourself in such a way that is very, very positive and energetic and something that people really want to be around, and they see you as fitting in with their team or enhancing their team in some way or bringing a skill set that is just definitely needed for this particular role. So everything you do, everything you say before, as in what you wrote in your resume, what you wrote in the application, what you presented on your LinkedIn or other social media platforms, everything there is telling a story about you. So make sure it's factual, make sure it's true, and make sure that it's on point with how you want to be presented. Okay. Secondly, you need to be prepared to discuss your past and your present. So if you currently have a position and you're seeking a new position, they're going to want to know, why are you seeking this position? What is it about your current position that you maybe you don't like or whatever? Now you got to be careful here. The last thing you want to do, this is a very tricky question that you may be asked. For example, if you have a current job and you're looking and applying for another job, they may say, well, why do you want to leave the other job? This is a trick question. Be very, very careful how you answer it. Here's what I mean by a trick question. If you come out and you say, well, my current job just really isn't meeting what I need, it's not paying me enough, it is not exciting me anymore, I'm bored, whatever, you give all of which may be true in your experience. That may in fact be true. But the last thing you want to do is say that. What you want to say is, I'm looking for an opportunity to grow. In recent years, in recent opportunities, I've done this, that, and the other, all of which have brought me to the point where right now, I believe the next step in my personal development, my personal evolution is to do X, Y, and Z. And I believe your company presents a unique opportunity that I would love to have the opportunity to take advantage of. And I believe I bring skills, and I bring a history, and I bring all kinds of energy and all kinds of leadership that I believe will be useful here, and I'm glad to offer it to you. That's the kind of message you want to say. Be very, very careful. Do not be negative. Whatever you do not ever name your former boss or your current boss. Do not ever point fingers at them and saying they did this and that and the other that is wrong. They treated me wrong. They whatever. Don't do that. That is a trick question, because you absolutely have no idea who the person or the people that are interviewing you may know at that other company, on a personal level, on a professional level. And even if they don't, the last thing you want the impression for them to have is that you were a complainer, that you're somebody who cannot be trusted, you're somebody who is just going to cause problems. That's the last thing in the world you ever want to be true of you. So never ever answer that question in a negative fashion. Always present it in a positive light as to how it is to prepare you for the job for which you're currently applying, and how you are excited about the opportunity to get involved with this different company in a different way. With that in mind, you need to be ready to explain any missteps that may have occurred along the way. For example, the one nobody ever wants to talk about. Assume that you have been terminated at some point, maybe terminated for cause. Talk about it. Be upfront about it. You don't have to go into excruciating detail. But you do need to talk about the mistakes you made, the things that you would do differently. That you talk about the mistake very, very quickly, very, very subtly, and then you go into, here's what I've done to recover from that. Here's the steps I've taken. I've taken additional training. I've received some coaching. I'm currently getting some coaching along those lines so that I don't ever make this mistake again. And here's what I have learned along this process, and own your own mistakes. Don't blame somebody else. If you do, you're going to come across as somebody who's very superficial and somebody who probably isn't going to be trustworthy, because quite frankly, nobody wants somebody who's going to blame anybody. That kind of a personality, that kind of a energy brought into the workplace can be very, very detrimental. And the last thing you want is to give them a reason to say no to you. You want to constantly be giving them a reason to say yes. So you talk about things that may have occurred. For example, this is just a kind of a very minor issue, although depending on the job, it could be very major. Let's assume, for example, that you have a history of speeding tickets. That you, a couple of years ago, you got pulled over a couple of times and you received these speeding tickets. And let's assume that the current job that you're applying for requires that you drive. You're driving a company vehicle. Now, this is a huge deal for the company, because while you may look at it and say, well, I'm just a delivery person, or I'm just driving from here to there, it's a big deal because they're giving you a company truck that has their label on the back, on the sides, Everywhere they go, everywhere that truck goes, it represents the company. So they need to have confidence that you are not going to present yourself as a driver in a detrimental way that will reflect poorly on them. So if you've had a couple of tickets along the way, you talk about it. You can say, well, in those circumstances, this, that, and the other occurred, and yes, I did speed, but here's what I've learned from it. I don't do that anymore. In fact, I go out of my way to make sure that I won't speed by driving 5 miles under the speed limit. But whatever it is that whatever steps you've taken to make sure that this has never happened, and you know to say, it's been 2 years since that happened, and I've not been stopped since, and I do not think it's going to be a problem going forward. That's the kind of way that you take something that was negative and you flip it so that it becomes somewhat of a positive. It's always going to be a bit of a drain on you, but I'll tell you what, if you own it and you talk about it as they bring it up in such a way that's honest and reflects upon your character in a very positive way, this is something that's going to help you. It will not hurt you in the long run. So again, you want to talk about any terminations, why it happened. Here's what I learned. Here's what I prepared for that. If you have gaps in your work history, sometimes people have gaps. For example, they work for 10 years straight, and then there's a 5-year period where it appears in the resume as if they didn't work. Talk about that. What happened? What were you doing during that time? Was that a situation where you went back to school, for example? Was that a situation like that maybe you were out of the workforce because you were caring for some children of yours, or maybe your parents, or maybe you had a situation that your own physical health that required you to be out of the workplace for a while? Talk about that and briefly. You don't have to go into great detail, but be able to explain that gap. The last thing you want is for them to say, "Oh, I wonder if Roy got fired at this point." So, well, maybe because in the event of a tie between you and another person, you don't want to give them this reason to say, "Well, I'm going to go ahead and go in the other direction because I really don't understand why there's these gaps in this particular background." Explain that. Be able to explain and talk to it when, if necessary, about your education. What is your educational history? Did you graduate from high school? Great. Where? Just in brief. You don't have to go into great detail, but just in brief, where did you graduate? Did you graduate from college? If so, or did you attend college somewhere? If you did, where did you go to school? What did you study while you were there? In brief, what was your major? Perhaps what was your minor? Specifically, you don't spend a lot of time on that, but you need to talk about it in such a way that it helped prepare you for the current job for which you are applying. That's how you want to talk about it. Always talk about that. Talk about training histories you have. I have learned this, and this. I'm certified in 2 or 3 different things. I'm currently taking a workshop right now, working on this particular skill set. Be very, very, very upfront about that. Lots of jobs, especially office-related jobs, require that you be a user of Excel or Microsoft Word or some of the Microsoft packages out there. If you are, make sure you talk about that because that is important, especially if it relates to your job. However, let me be very blunt about this. Do not overestimate your skill set. So, for example, if the job description requires that you be an expert user of Microsoft Excel, i.e. be able to use complex formulas and such as that, pivot tables and things like that, if you don't have that skill set, last thing you want to do is say you do. Because let me tell you, if you do, your future employer is going to hand you a job assignment that's going to require that skill set. And if you can't do it, guess he's going to be let go for overestimating his or her credentials. So don't do that. Be very upfront. Tell them exactly what you're doing. Tell them what you do to do this. Make sure that everything you do is you frame it in such a way that it is positive. It has led me my entire life. Here's what I've done. Boom, boom, boom. It's led me to this day and point in time where I'm applying for this position because I believe this is something I am uniquely qualified for and that I want to be able to benefit your company by my presence and my ability to be a part of your team and to develop that. Always, always, always do that. With that in mind, always project confidence in everything you do. Confidence in how you walk. Don't slink into the job interview with your head down. Walk with your head up. Talk. Don't do anything artificial, but practice this. I encourage you to get in front of a mirror and practice your walk. Practice how your handshake with a family member or a friend. Make sure that you're presenting a firm handshake. Ladies, this is for you as well. Make sure that you're presenting a firm handshake. I'm not talking about breaking somebody's knuckles because you squeeze their hand so hard. I'm not talking about that at all. What we're talking about is something that presents confidence, that says, I am a strong individual and I am going to be a valued part of your team. You need me. You need me to be a part of that team. Everything you do. Your dress. Always, guys, wear a tie. When in doubt, wear a tie. If you have a suit or you have a sport coat, put it on. Look the best you can. If you don't have those things, that's fine. But make sure that you are dressed as nicely as you can. And you want to make sure, especially if you're looking for a higher level job, mid-management or above, so supervisor, manager, senior manager, what have you, CEO, all the way up to CEO, make sure that you are looking sharp. That when they see you walk in the door, they're saying, oh, hey, this person, this man, this woman could represent our company in a very positive way. Because here's the thing, as you're walking down the hall, understand that your interview starts the moment you enter the building, not the moment they welcome you in, the moment you enter the building. So when you walk in that building, you do not know who's going to greet you first. Often it may be a secretary. It may be a lower level employee whose sole job in life at that point is to escort you from the front door to wherever it is the meeting is going to take place, wherever that interview is going to take place. And you want to make sure that you're treating that person with dignity and respect, and that you're talking to them in a human perspective, that you're being very, very nice. You're addressing them with respect, with honor, that you're shaking their hand, and you're letting them know in no uncertain terms how happy you are and excited you are to be here today, and that you really love this company. Because let me explain what you don't understand is quite often after the formal interview has taken place, that person will be called in by whoever interviewed you, and they'll say, tell me about what your perceptions are of this person. And quite frankly, I've seen several job interviews that were ruined because the person was rude to whoever it was that escorted them down the hall. They didn't talk to them. They didn't smile. They didn't say, how are you? Did you have a great day? They didn't say, drop dead. They didn't say anything. And it came across as being cold and aloof and rude, all of which you do not ever want to be said of you, especially when you're trying to get in the door. Make sure you have good eye contact. That doesn't mean stare them. Don't give them these evil eyes like this. But have good eye contact with them where you're talking to them. And you're making sure, if there's more than one person interviewing you, you want to make sure that you are very casually making eye contact with every single person in the room as you talk, because they need to feel like you were addressing them personally, as if they are the only person in the world, in your world right now, even though there may be a team of four or five or six. I've seen interviews with 10 people before, as tough as that can be sometimes. So make sure you do that. Your mannerisms. This is not the time to be adjusting your shirt and everything else, when you're adjusting your tie or whatever it is going on. This is the time for you to be relaxed, to present that calmness, that confidence in whatever it is you're doing. And again, this carries for any position, whether it's a lower level, entry level position within a company, or whether it's more of a senior level management position or executive position. Same skills apply. And so you want to make sure that you treat everybody there with respect. As you walk down the hall, as you enter the room, pay attention to what you see. Do you see pictures on the wall? Do you see diplomas on the wall? Do you see pictures of children on the wall, on the desk? Whatever. What do you see, if anything? Sometimes these interviews will be in rooms that are rather sterile because they're just a conference room and there's really not much in there. But you may see the logo of the company or old logos of the company on the wall, or perhaps you see a headline from a newspaper of something that they did in the past or are currently doing. Perhaps you might see a product in the area, or if you're in somebody's office, you might see their diploma, where they went to school. Comment on it. Hey, I noticed you went to the University of Notre Dame. Great. Did you know I grew up near there? Da, 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 da. And you talk. Now you suddenly have a connection. You're building that personal question. It only takes 10 seconds. Doesn't really amount to much. But what happens is you've just built another reason for them to like you, another reason for them to trust you. Or even if you didn't go to school there, it might be that you respect them. Say, hey, I saw that we're UT won last week. Good job. If they happen to be a UT grad. Now, if they happen to have gone to some other school, a rival school, for example, it's probably not a good idea to say that. But you talk about whatever their alma mater is. and you talk about their background that you have seen. If you haven't already looked online, often online in the company website, they'll talk about so-and-so is a graduate from here, got this degree from there, an MBA from there, a JD from another school. And so you can know that up front. Just it's small talk at the beginning of the interview that will help endear you a little bit with them. So make sure you pay attention to that. Again, we know about by now we should know a little bit of the history of the company from what you can gather online. You should know a little bit about their offerings and services that they have, what they're doing right now, and just you want to pay attention. Now, once the interview's done, that interview is going to last. We can talk more, and in future sessions, we'll actually talk a little more in detail about some of the things I just presented to you in brief. But here's the thing that I want you to make sure that you understand. When the interview is complete and it's all done and you're ready, you shake hands with everybody in the room, and you say, thank you, I appreciate your time. I really look forward to hearing from you, and I really hope, I'm excited to have the opportunity to compete for a job at this firm, with this company. I'm excited about that, and I really look forward to hearing from you really soon. And as soon as you are done, here's what I want you to do. Here's the secret. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to either give them your business card during this time, as you sit down, you give everybody a copy of your business card. If you've done that, what often happens is they will reciprocate and give you a copy of their business card. Now that you have their business card, I want you to go home and I want you to handwrite a note of thank you to each one of those people. And I want you to address it and mail it to each one of them privately. It's important. You would be shocked. In fact, this is an exceedingly rare old school skill that I'm telling you is very, very powerful, because it means a lot that you actually took the time to remember that Jimmy Jones and Janet Evans were sitting in the room with you. And you actually talked to them, you shook their hand, you thanked them for it. If there's some little anecdote, that's something you remember, talk about it. For example, if you remember that one person that's sitting there was a graduate from the University of Texas and somebody else sitting there is from Texas A&M, you might even say, hey, it's a great pleasure meeting with you. Good luck with your Aggies this week as you meet. Whatever it is. It's just a brief note, but thanking them most of all for the opportunity to interview and letting them know in just a few sentences about your excitement and having the possibility of joining their team and bringing your skill set along with it. Well, this is just a kind of whirlwind tour of the interview session. We'll do more as we go forward with some more in depth about these kinds of skills. But I'm telling you, if you do what I just told you to do and what I just encouraged you to do, you will greatly enhance the opportunity for being selected for these positions. Until then, I look forward to talking to you again as we bring in some more skills in this series we call Interviews Made Easy. And again, go back to tier1coaching.org. And I am Dr. Roy Sheneman. I'm CEO of Tier 1 Coaching and Training. I thank you so much for joining me today, and have a great day. Bye-bye.